I'm Mary Noonan. I'm from Mayo originally. I'm from Clontarf, and I've been working in the Red Stables Artist Studios for 2.5 years now. It's run by Dublin City Council, so you apply for like a residency, and you get up to 3 years. So my 3 years are up in July. I think it's like all good things come to an end, you know. You kind of, when you know you're going to be here for 3 years or up to 3 years, so you're always kind of prepared for the fact that you're going to have to move on somewhere else as well. But that's a good thing as well, you know. It's good to kind of move on. You feel like you're progressing in some way. I always loved art. I used to always draw and stuff. I remember my mother saying to me that anytime we would go in the car somewhere when I was small, I would always be drawn on the windows and things when they were fogged up, and drawing chalk lines around the dog outside and things. So I was always drawing something. And I think especially then when I was a teenager, I just became really immersed in drawing all the time. And I think I knew from about second year in school that I wanted to do something with art, but I didn't really know that you could really do anything with art. No, I didn't know what what the options were. So I think initially I wanted to do art teaching, because I thought that was the only way that you could actually survive doing something through art. But when I left school, I went to Dún Laoghaire, and I did a diploma in Dún Laoghaire, and that was 3 years. And then I worked for a year after that, and I went back to college again. I did my degree in NCAD, and then I moved back to Mayo. I worked in a studio in Westport, which was great. I was there for about 3 years, and then I went back to NCAD again and did my MA, and I did it all through painting, so it was all 2D painting based. When I came to the Red Stables first, it took me a while to settle in. You know, I just finished my MA, and that was such an intense experience. It was 2 years, really full on, you know. And when I left there, I think it took me about 6 months to really settle into the Red Stables, especially because the space here is quite unusual, you know. I mean, you literally still have the iron bars and everything, the stalls from where the horses were. So you feel like, you know, you're sitting in a place where there was maybe, you know, a horse and foal not so long ago, you know, and that's nice because you get that sense of history and everything. But it does kind of almost segment the way that you work. How I think maybe my work has changed since I got here. I think I've become a little bit more focused on the watercolours, and I started to look maybe more at medieval art and illustration and things from that kind of thing. I would like, just in terms of our own history as well, like looking at things like the Book of Kells and stuff, you know, because people don't really think that much about Irish art history, you know. It's always very European, and I wanted to kind of look a little bit at what, you know, we had on offer, you know. So I started to look a bit more at medieval manuscripts and things like that. So I think that kind of influenced my work maybe the most. That's probably been the most influence on my work since I've been here. I was looking at where I was from and also my own identity, and how, for me, how maybe a lot of art history in terms of maybe painters from the 40s and 50s, and how they would come to places in the west of Ireland and do kind of almost like idealised kind of romantic landscapes. And I suppose for someone who's actually from there and lives in a place like that, I guess the way of life is not really what you see in romantic landscapes. I suppose I wanted to kind of show just part of who I was as a person and about where I was from and things like that. So especially then when I went back to do my MA, I kind of delved into that much more deeply, and I started to look at things like folklore and fables and fairy tales and things, stories that I would have heard growing up, things like to do with the fairies and you know, things like if you get lost in a field, you have to turn your jacket inside out because the fairies are playing tricks on you. Just simple things like my granddad would have told me and stuff growing up. So I started to read a lot of things like the likes of Lady Wilde, Oscar Wilde's mother, but she would have collected a lot of folklore, and as did Douglas Hyde and people like that. And I think it was a big part of the Celtic revival, and these kind of stories that were collected from, I suppose, ordinary everyday people and were written down by the Anglo-Irish, I thought were very interesting, because I thought it showed so many different aspects of what it is to be a country person and living in the country, and whether it's from the person of the land, or whether you're what class you come from, and these kind of things. So I thought all those things were interesting, and I could use them as the basis or the starting point of work for me, whether it's drawing or painting or making sculptures or whatever it is. I just had a solo show last year in the Lindenhall Art Centre, and that was in Castlebar. That was quite a big show for me, because I guess if you're not involved in the whole art thing, you don't really realise how long it takes to get a body of work together. So you could be 2 years doing that and then you have a show and it's over in a month. But and then I had a show in Roscommon as well. That was in the Roscommon Arts Centre with 2 other people. So I've got a show coming up in November, and that's in Clare in Ennistimon, and I'm working towards that at the moment. So I'm beginning to make new work for that, really. I'm starting to work on a self-portrait, and so it's a challenge. You kind of have to maybe have it finished and then be able to look at it a little bit more, or you're constantly questioning what you're doing anyway. So it's when you're right in the middle of something, it's kind of hard to talk about it. One of the pieces, it's a self-portrait as an Irish elk. I went to see the show in Emma a year ago. There was a Barry Cook retrospective, and there was Frida Kahlo's work was shown at the same time, and she's an amazing artist, and I love both of those artists. So I was kind of wandering through the exhibition, and I had seen one of his kind of iconic paintings of the Irish elk that is in the Natural History Museum. When you go in, there's 2 imposing Irish elks, and ancient Irish elks, and they have these massive antlers coming out of them, and they obviously don't exist anymore, but they're real kind of icons, well, I would see them as that way anyway. And I was looking at Frida Kahlo's work as well, and she did just amazing self-portraits. So I felt just in terms of myself, the idea of doing a self-portrait as an ancient Irish elk was kind of like that kind of stuff I was talking about earlier on, about the fables and fairy tales. And in a lot of fairy tales or folklore, you get person kind of morphs or changes from a person into an animal, or vice versa. And so I was thinking of that, and I was thinking of trying to place myself in terms of Irish history as well, and just my own place in that. And I also kind of like the surreal element of it. People don't really go around with antlers sticking out of their heads. So it's kind of, there's a sense of humour, but it's almost kind of a sinister, slightly sinister sense of humour in it. One of the pieces, it's a glass dome with a little island in the middle of it. And the island, it's just a mountain, and in the mountain it looks a little bit like Croagh Patrick. So I was thinking of this little mountain, and I have this glass dome with fluff in the inside of it it's meant to look like a little bit like clouds, and hanging out of the clouds are little strings with little 2D angels coming out of them. So there's basically these angels that are hurtling towards Earth to this mountain. That kind of comes again from stories that I would have looked at, things like how people used to say that the fairies were fallen angels that God had cast out from heaven, and that they'd plummeted to the earth like that. So it's using all these different kind of things that I've read down through the years and incorporating them in my own way, in my own work. So in a way, I'm kind of creating my own little world, and people can tap into it. Maybe some people can't, but but it's I suppose it's just kind of trying to communicate a little bit of what it is for me to be in the world and how I think about things. And I think that's what artists should do. They should show a different side of life.